Morning, everybody. Coming to you from the deplorable stronghold of work in the middle of the night. That's right, we're all out here working, so the liberal elitists can have an easy, seamless day. The people that hate the deplorables, we're out here making the world go around for you. So you can get up and out at 9 a.m. and continue to hate us. Anyways, I digress. So let's get one thing out of the way real quick. This whole Trump, people paying Trump for pardons, nonsense. Don't give it any of your time. It's a nothing burger. First of all, use common sense. You think Trump needs $1 million or a couple $1 million because he's struggling financially to pardon somebody? Yeah, I don't think so. I encourage you to look into what Clinton did with Mark Rich years ago. Pardoned him. There was an investigation years later in I believe it was the Obama administration. Rudy Giuliani was sounding the alarm on it that Clinton was getting paid for pardons. Mark Rich in particular, and our good friend Giuliani was sounding the alarms about it, and they did a 3 or 4 year investigation, and of course it got swept under the rug. And guess who was one of the ones leading the investigation? None other than James Comey. So don't listen to the pardon for money thing about Trump. Big nothing burger. Trump doesn't need the money. You know, and also, look at the amount of people Trump has pardoned. It's like a dozen, or it's less than 15. And then look at Obama. Obama was over 1,000. I think 1,300. So that's a big nothing burger. So I want to try and articulate a point I've been thinking about recently. The problem that the Republican Party has compared to the Dems. I don't quite know how to put it into words, but I'll give them my best shot. The Republicans have an issue in that the older wing of the Republican Party are the ones that have the time, that are willing to go out and do the poll watching, and a little bit of campaigning, to do the phone calls and stuff like that. The younger conservative movement, we're out here making the world go around. And here's my issue, is that the younger generation, I believe there's a ton of us with conservative values, but they stopped teaching basic civics in school. The Marxists came in and overtook all the schooling, took over academia, and they stopped teaching certain things. True American history, other types of history, and I don't think civics is there's a big push in teaching civics anymore, and say social studies or whatever. So you might have a huge conservative movement that doesn't understand specifically how government works, and that's okay. I don't blame them for it. I mean, it's a intricate system that we have, and there's a lot of moving parts. So the older conservative wing, they understand it. They know civics. They know how government works. They know how to go out and help campaign. They know the importance of it. They know to donate here and there. They know about poll watching and all, and they have the time for it because maybe they're retired, semi-retired. So we have two wings. We have the younger and the older. The older wing is going out to do all the legwork, and the younger generation is doing kind of the online stuff, the digital soldier stuff. But here's the problem. When things like this voter irregularities and voter fraud come up, it's the older wing that is going to go out of their way to contact the representatives and detail what they've seen, their thoughts on it, and maybe go to one of these hearings and be a witness because they were at the polls. So they're willing to go do that, or they know that they can go do that. But here's the problem. back in their day, they could point out, whether somebody broke the law, or they could point out the faults in the other side's argument, and typically the other side would go, oh, okay, you caught us, and there would be retribution for it. The problem now is you could point out all the fraud and cheating and lying and crime in the world to the Democrats, and they don't acknowledge their mistakes. They don't go, okay, you caught us, and we're not going to do that again. They just deny. So I think you need the energy of the young movement to really combat that. But the young movement doesn't have a good grasp on civically on exactly what and how to do it. So I think we have quite a conundrum where the older wing of the Republican Party is aware, they know what's going on, they know it's not right. They're just not as willing to get out in public and do something about it. And part of that is because they've been intimidated by the radical left, the paramilitary wing of the left, the Antifas, the BLMs, even some of the establishment. Well, shit, AOC's establishment now. So I think we have a big problem there, and we need to get the younger, more energetic side of the conservative movement engaged civically. And I've said this in several of my videos. You have to be calling your local representatives to expose this fraud. There's no reason that every Republican politician in this country right now should not be on every news broadcast, on every local broadcast. I know it's tough and they get censored on the big national stuff, but get on your local news, get on YouTube, make videos, do something. Every Republican politician should be raising holy hell right now over this voting stuff, but they're not. They're either intimidated, they're going to go with the flow, or they're corrupt too. So I think we have a bit of a conundrum there with the Republican Party. It always seems like the Democrats are in lockstep, doesn't it? I don't know what it is, but they seem to be much more put together than we are. And maybe that's because the base of the conservative movement is busy, making the world go around. We're out here doing the work. We're out here going to church, being with our family. We kind of thought that the government would run itself, and as long as there were checks and balances, everything would be okay. But when the Marxist left is just bashing through all the checks and balances and then crying racism because you asked for voter ID, we have a big problem. Speaking of voter ID, they say that it's racist to ask for voter ID. We've talked about this before, how little they think of the Hispanic and black voting base. They think that those people are not capable of going out and getting a driver's license or an ID card or whatever. In countries like Mexico and shit, even in Northern Africa, all those countries require you to have an identification to go vote. I challenge you to go to Mexico and try to vote in one of their elections. They're going to laugh at you. Go, well, you're not a citizen. You don't live here. Where's your voter identification? In Mexico, it's not even just your driver's license. You have to bring in your voter ID card that has your picture on it. But here in America, it's racist to do that. The Republican Party has really folded on some of these issues, and they're paying the price for it now. I mean, this is what happens when you don't stand your ground and you're feckless, which is what the Republican Party has turned into. And all these Democrats who hate Trump, what do they hate him for? They hate him because the TV told them to. But what is it that the TV told them? Oh, they told them about the kids in cages. Every Republican politician should have been in the media going, wait a minute, those are Obama's cages. Those aren't Trump's cages. And there's been a very clear warning put out to anybody seeking, refugee status or trying to migrate here. If you come here and you bring your kids and you're not coming here with the proper documentation and you're not going through the system to gain citizenship, you risk losing your children. You have to take some responsibility for your life and your children, no matter what country you're from or where you're trying to go. If they have a law or a rule that says, yeah, you can't do that until you go through this process, you can't bitch and moan about the consequences of it. Nobody in their right mind wants to put kids in cages. You know? Can we just start with that agreement, that basis, when we have discussions? Yeah, nobody wants people to be harmed. Nobody wants kids to be hurt. And that goes for everything. Can we just start with a baseline agreement that nobody wants people to be hurt? Like, war is bad. I'm all over the place here, but like, racism is bad, war is bad, nobody wants to hurt kids. But, you know, the Democrats, they just swing at everything. And it doesn't matter if they miss, because the media just covers for them. So they just swing at everything. So everybody's up in arms that Lin Wood is a Democrat, or has been for a long time. It doesn't matter. Who cares? You know, he's down in Georgia with Sidney Powell encouraging people not to go vote in the Senate runoff in January. And he's basically telling the people, these Republicans need to have consequences for not being out here and supporting Trump and supporting this movement and getting transparency in this election. And I'll tell you what, he's absolutely right. You can do both things. We cannot be a light switch brain culture where there's only two positions, on or off. It can't just be a hardline stance one way or another. We can do both. We can win the Senate race and get transparency. And that's the point he's trying to prove. If I lived in Georgia and all those Republican leaderships, if Governor Kemp and the Secretary of State, if none of them were out stomping their feet about this election and the fraud, I wouldn't vote for him either. Why? What, to control the Senate, to play the same game over and over and over again? That's all it is. Of course I want the Republicans to win the Senate race down there. But I don't want it to be at the cost of the Democrats being able to steal a presidential election. We can do both things. It's not an on or off position. It's walking and chewing gum at the same time. So another part of Lin Wood's deal is this server in Frankfurt, Germany. You know, we talked about Lieutenant General McInerney and Flynn, where McInerney said that there was a shootout with the CIA and the 305th Army Battalion, and that some soldiers died. I don't know if that's true. But, you know, here's the deal. My dad turned me on to this a while ago. He calmed me down a little bit and goes, listen, you can have all the information of conspiracy. You can have all the information of crime and present it. But what you need is somebody that's willing to listen to it. You need a justice system that's willing to do the right thing. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. A perfect example of that is Building 7 on 9/11. Now, my dad will break free from me here and say, yeah, that's a big conspiracy. But if you just look at a video of Building 7 on September 11th, 47-story building that fell at free fall speed, wasn't hit by a plane, but it was on fire in certain spots. Just go look at the video. It's just obvious. So you can have all the evidence in the world, but if nobody's going to listen, it doesn't matter. And that's what we're up against right here. You know, Reuters put out a poll that close to 50% of Americans think that this election was fraudulent, that the Democrats and the globalists stole it, and that Trump should be elected. Common sense tells you all that. We've seen all the videos. I don't have the ability to cut in here and show videos of all these different hearings and these people testifying, but you know, just go look for them. Go to Right Side Broadcasting and watch all these people detail the affidavits that they've given and sworn to under the penalty of perjury. That is evidence. So basically, you can have overwhelming evidence of all of it, but if nobody's going to listen, it doesn't matter. But the point of these hearings that Giuliani and Jenna Ellis are doing, the point behind them all is to convince the legislatures of these states, which a lot of them are majority Republican, to appoint electors that are going to cast their vote for Trump, regardless of what the fraudulent vote count says. You know, so they're really trying to get down to all these swing states, show their evidence to convince the legislature to put electors up that aren't going to go for this fraud. They can see it, it's obvious, you know, and when they go to cast their electoral vote, yeah, we're not doing that. We're not voting for Biden because it's fraudulent. It's obvious. You know, backdating ballots. Can you believe that that's an actual thing that we're having a problem with? That is clear crime and clear fraud. And there are people that have put their freedom on the line under penalty of perjury to say that that happened. A ballot comes in on November 4th, take them all and backdate them to November 2nd. Totally illegal. There's a truck driver from, I believe he's from Pennsylvania, drove to New York from Pennsylvania, picked up pallets full of ballots. It's estimated to be around 300,000 ballots. Picked them up from New York and brought them to Pennsylvania. Now, he's just a truck driver. He's not responsible for what he's hauling. You know what I mean? He just knows what he's hauling. Every state is responsible for their own elections. There's nothing that happens in New York that should be getting shipped down to Pennsylvania prior to an election. Certainly not pallets full of ballots. We saw the guy with the USB in Georgia. He's on an election computer. He's tabulating ballots, counting them. He pulls the USB out and walks over to some laptop that's sitting there. And who knows what he does. But the internet is not supposed to be involved with any of this. So why he's going from one vote machine to a laptop with a USB drive, who knows? It's all on video. So this is another, you know, piece of evidence that it's so blatant, it's on video, the mainstream media is not going to cover it. And that's another problem we're having. And I'm trying to be right in the middle here, because we have the left-wing media, who's the establishment, legacy media, the mainstream, who's shutting all of this talk of voter fraud down. They will not allow it. And that forces us into the depths of the internet, where everybody goes strong right wing, whether it's Q, it's the servers, it's Lynn Wood, it's Sidney Powell. Listen, I hope to God all their stuff is true. That's great. But we have to meet somewhere in the middle where the truth is, where there's video evidence and we can see it and say, okay, let's do something about it. Not a big mystery about a server in Germany or Hugo Chavez and all this stuff. Listen, if that stuff's true, it's great. But I'm trying to be in the middle here and say we don't need all that. We can see people on video ripping up ballots, burning ballots, moving USB drives from computer to computer. That's video evidence of this thing being totally fraudulent. Now, I don't know what we do. I don't know if we have a revote. But what's interesting is that all these claims of fraud and all these irregularities, and not just claims, there's evidence, it's totally undisputed by the left. They have not come out once and said or given an explanation for one of these obvious pieces of evidence. They're just totally silent. And the mainstream media covers for them. Don't you think if someone was accusing you of something so crazy as stealing an election, you would be out there defending yourself? But just like Biden campaigning, didn't leave the basement, they're not doing anything now. The biggest news from Biden since the election has been that he hurt his foot. It's unbelievable. Don't you think that camp would be out there going, this is not true, there's no way, and proving it? So, 75 plus million Americans would believe them and would, respect their presidency if they are to get in. but nobody's going to believe him. You know, when Bill Barr comes out and says he hasn't seen any evidence yet, and the mainstream media and the left, they run with that. Look, even Bill Barr said there's no evidence. Yeah, Bill Barr didn't say they were done looking. All Bill Barr said is what has crossed his desk. He hasn't seen overwhelming evidence. He's not the one investigating it. He has investigators that are doing it, and they're probably putting something together to present to him. So it was a small soundbite, and then everybody runs with it. You know, and it just validates their thoughts that there was no election fraud. So we got a big problem. You know, we have a big problem with these Marxists getting into the school systems and not teaching civics. We have a big problem with these Marxists just throwing everything at the wall just to cause confusion, so behind the scenes they can slip in. So hopefully these hearings can convince these legislatures to buck the system and go up and vote Trump, because the evidence is obvious. The Democrats cheated. I encourage you to go to Right Side Broadcasting. I encourage you to go listen to Trump's speech from last night on Facebook. He went on for 45 minutes showing the fraud. You know, he's doing that because the mainstream media just keeps saying no fraud, no fraud, no fraud. So he has to go to places like Facebook and Twitter to put out videos of himself going, look, here's the fraud. Because no news outlet will even cover him. So I think we're in a real pickle here. We need to get, you know, when these electors, if they go up and vote for Trump, the Democrats can challenge it, and then it goes to the Supreme Court. And it's really going to take some brave people to go against these fraudulent votes and do the right thing. You know, and hopefully they're not scared of what the crazy maniac violent left is going to do in face of that. You know, they can't be worried about the Antifa. They can't be worried about the maniac left. They have to do what's right by the country, because there's 75 million people, probably more, that were Trump supporters that aren't. This isn't going to sit well with them either. Are we going to go burn cities down? No, we're not. I don't know what it is we're going to do, but we're certainly not going to recognize the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris presidency. So, you know, I understand what they're trying to do down in Georgia, but we need to keep those Senate seats. But we should be dangling that over their head and say, listen, if you're not going to come out and support Trump, we're not going to vote for you. Screw it. Take the whole federal government. We'll do our own thing. That's what the people should be doing. Call your representatives. I encourage you. Get their phone numbers. Call out-of-state representatives. Just keep badgering them. They will act if the American people hold them accountable and tell them what to do. That's what they're there for. They're there to represent you. They're not our leaders. They represent our values and what we want, the American people. So we'll pick it up a little bit later. I'm sure a lot's going to happen here between now and tomorrow and the following day. So y'all have a good day. Catch you later.